Hi, I am Stuart Nelson, and this is my grandmother, Donna Nelson. So, let's start off talking about your childhood. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I was born in a very small town, a little southern town in the southern part of Missouri. We pretty much knew everyone in the town and knew our neighbors and a lot of our grandparents and cousins. Most of us that lived there had relatives that lived on every block.
So, how small was the town?
About 1,200 people.
Wow, that's pretty small. So, did everyone know everyone's neighbors?
We not only knew everybody's neighbors, but we knew the names of everybody's pets. And there's a funny story that the whole town knew. There was a lady that her name was Mrs. Giddens, and she had a dog that every time she got in the car to go to the grocery store, to go to church, to go visiting, that dog would follow behind the car, and then wherever she was, the dog would lay out in the front yard or in front of the store or church, and everybody knew where Mrs. Giddens was. She could not hide from anybody in the town because that dog was wherever she was.
Was that dog ever trained to do that, or did it just do it on its own?
It was just an old hound dog, and that's just the way it was.
Wow, some dog she got there. Alright, tell me your biggest mystery as a kid.
As a kid, I had an older sister, and my biggest mystery was trying to find out how successful she was, or rather I saw that, but how she became so successful.
Was she one of your role models?
She was definitely a role model for me. She was very smart and studied, and so she was top of her class. She had lots and lots of friends. She had lots of young men calling for dates, but my dad was very strict, so she didn't get to go on very many of those. And she was in a lot of activities, in band and majorette and sports and just about everything that the school had to offer. And yet she maintained her grades. And I just couldn't understand how she could be so successful and get all that done. So I was really watching her.
In what way did she inspire you?
She was always honest, and she really didn't get into trouble with Mother and Daddy. She was never disrespectful, and she treated me and everyone else with a lot of thoughtfulness and kindness. So she was really a good person, and that just makes you want to be a good person.
Did that carry along with you throughout the years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. When I went off to college, I could have become wild, I guess, like some of the other kids. But I'd already had all of that teaching and training and role modeling by my sister. And, there were temptations out there, but I just couldn't, I had to stay in line.
What was your biggest dream being a child?
My biggest dream has always been to work with children. I really like children. I love being around them. They made me laugh. They brought so much joy. And for some reason, I had a lot of patience with children. I didn't have a lot of patience with everything else, or everybody else. But with children, it just seemed like something magical happened when I worked with children.
So it sounded like you guys had a pretty good connection there, huh?
Yes.
Nice. Did you ever dream about being a teacher?
Yes. When I was in high school, even the teachers and everyone knew, because I would work with children in church and at Bible school. Some of the things at church would be Bible school. I helped with a youth choir, just all kinds of things working with children. So the high school teachers knew that, and when there would be a teacher that got sick and had to go home during the day in the elementary school, which was next door, they would call me and see if I would go over and stay with the children till they could get somebody in. So that really helped because it put me into a classroom situation.
Very nice. How did you prepare for the teaching job?
Well, like I said, I started early being involved with children, and I think that is probably one of the greatest preparations that you can do when you're young, is make sure that you have the patience for them, that you can connect with them, that you can understand them, and you can talk with them and they can understand you. So then I went on to college and started right in on my education courses and got my bachelor's degree in elementary education.
Very nice. What were the easy and hard things about teaching?
The easy things were just getting along with the children, and it was just easy to connect with them when they would be cooperative and tell you what they needed and where they were having problems. And the hard part is when they wouldn't tell you what was going on, and you were trying to make sure that they understood, and sometimes they were too ashamed maybe to tell you that they didn't understand. So trying to figure that out without embarrassing them, that was pretty hard.
Yeah, I bet. Compare small town to now living in Chicago.
In a small town, you can't get by with anything because you're going to see everyone every day at the grocery store, at church, at the ballpark, wherever. And if you are a bad person, they're going to know it, and you're not going to be successful in a small town. You've got to do right, and you've got to act right. And when I came up here, people were rude, and because they don't get caught. They have sort of safety in numbers. They can say terrible things to you and signal terrible things to you and go on, and you'll never see them again. So you don't have to deal with them on a daily basis, so they can get by with a lot of stuff. And that seems to be a good situation for people to be bad or to show their anger, but you wouldn't get by with that in a small town.
How was the men to women relationship between the small town and Chicago?
In a southern town, men were very, very protective. You grow up that way. In fact, my father and my grandfather still tipped their hats to women. So they didn't swear in front of women, and they were never rude to women. They would take a back seat. They would open doors. They would get up and give you their seat. They really respected their mothers, which carried over to their sisters, which carried over to all women. That was just the Southern way. And even some of them, the boys in school, and some of the men that, that weren't really very nice, we'll put it that way, even they respected women. You never bullied or pushed a woman around because, it just showed that you were lacking in character. And, a bully is a coward because a bully picks on someone weaker. So even the worst people in town, which there weren't very many, they always respected women. They, otherwise they knew that they would be looked at as a coward.
What were your hobbies and interests throughout your whole life?
Music, probably the first time, starting out with singing. The first time I ever sang was at church when they were having some singing that night at church. And my grandmother had taught me some songs, and I told my dad I wanted to sing too. So he took me up in front of the church. Now this is all small church, small town, so this is what you do. You can do all this in a small town. And he stood me up and told the congregation that I wanted to sing. So they, said, sure. So I sang at 4 years old in front of the congregation. And from there, I sang in school, took voice lessons in high school and college, took piano lessons, was in the band, and then later, because I took voice, I was singing in college choirs and at weddings and, all those different kinds of functions. And then in my later years, I began to write some music. So I've written about 12 songs, but I'm not really good at that yet.
So, how many have you got published?
I don't have any songs published.
None?
But I also wrote, I wrote poetry. I wrote poetry very young, and I had one of those published,
Oh.
and an offer to publish another one.
Oh, wow. Okay. To sum all this up, what are some of your future plans, and what would you like to pursue?
I don't think I'll ever get tired of learning. I still read books that are biographical or autobiographical, history books, sometimes a little bit of politics, and I'm not real sharp with that. But anything that, that takes me to another place or helps me to understand people, I still like to, read things that is going to teach me. And I would really like to go and edit classes at the high school, which would be the closest. But even in college, if I had a chance to do that. Because you can really learn, and then I wouldn't have the homework to do because I don't have time and all the papers to write.
Right. Well, thank you for spending your time and talking about your experience and stories with me. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. So,
Is it off?
no, but I'm not sure how.